Hello everyone, and welcome back to Archo. I hope you are all doing well. Before we begin today's incident, if you would like to share your terrifying experiences, you can send them to our email, archo.story@gmail.com. Today's incident comes from a professional Russian space center. It is the true experience of my friend Alexei, an experienced astronaut. Several years ago, during his first mission, he encountered something beyond explanation, something horrifying, incomprehensible, and utterly terrifying. This is the incident. Alexei and his colleague, Dmitry, had spent months in rigorous training before finally boarding the spacecraft. Their mission was simple on paper: reach a specialized Russian space station, collect data and equipment, and return safely. In reality, nothing could have prepared them for what awaited. The first few days passed uneventfully. The void of space was mesmerizing, the Earth shrinking beneath them into a perfect blue and green marble. Yet Alexei could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. There was a subtle unease, almost imperceptible, as if the station itself were watching them, waiting. By the third day, they approached the station. Suddenly, a minor signal failed. "Dmitry, do you hear that?" Alexei asked, frowning. "No, everything seems fine." "Just a little static," Dmitry replied casually. But Alexei's instincts screamed otherwise. Shadows seemed to shift unnaturally along the docking path. When they docked, an unusual warmth and a faint, chemical-like scent filled the air. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet Alexei felt its presence. Inside the station, the atmosphere was suffocating. Dmitry began acting strangely, irritable, distracted, almost as if he were losing himself to some unseen force. Words escaped him in fragmented phrases that made no sense, whispers of something Alexei couldn't comprehend. As night fell, Alexei walked alone through a long, dim corridor. Dust coated the walls in ghostly patterns, lights flickered unpredictably, and shadows danced in ways that defied logic. Then he heard it, a whisper, soft, sibilant, impossible to locate. "Dmitry," he called, but silence answered. The data logs revealed that all of Dmitry's communications had vanished. Alexei's pulse quickened. He realized with a deepening horror that the station was not empty, it was alive, in a way that defied reason. Hours passed. Alexei glimpsed strange reflections in polished metal panels. Dmitry's eyes flickered in unnatural ways, glowing faintly, alien. And then, without warning, Dmitry vanished. One moment he was there, leaning over a panel, and the next, gone. No sign of struggle, no explanation, just emptiness. Alexei's heart raced as a distorted voice whispered through the communicator. It wasn't Dmitry. It wasn't human. You shouldn't have come alone. The station shivered as if responding, vibrating subtly at first, then more violently. Corridors seemed to stretch impossibly. Shadows moved counter to the flickering light. Alexei stumbled forward, chest pounding, realizing that he was utterly alone, trapped with something he could neither see nor fully understand. Time lost meaning. The station's geometry twisted unnaturally, doors led to impossible loops, corridors doubled back on themselves. A low hum resonated through the metal floors, vibrating through Alexei's chest, driving panic deeper. Whispers multiplied, some human, some alien, repeating Dmitry's name, then Alexei's, then indistinct syllables that shredded his mind. Then, he saw it. A shadow, taller than a man, shifting like smoke, moving toward him. Its presence was deliberate, intelligent, watching him as he flailed for escape. Alexei realized the truth: Dmitry had not simply disappeared. The station had claimed him, consumed him, and something malevolent now held sway over the corridors. The airlock to the docking bay was ajar, swinging slightly as if inviting him. Alexei ran. He expected to find Dmitry, or at least some explanation, but the bay was empty. Floating debris glimmered faintly in the half-light. And there, suspended in the vast black, was the faint outline of his friend. Dmitri. Or what remained of him. His limbs were stretched unnaturally, his face twisted in silent terror, eyes wide and unseeing. He drifted, not moving by any visible propulsion, as if something invisible had taken hold of him. Alexei screamed, reaching out, but the void pulled Dmitri farther, disappearing into the infinite black. Alexei stumbled backward, choking on fear. The station's walls began to breathe, pulsating as if alive. Shadows crept along the floor, coalescing into vaguely humanoid forms with glowing eyes, moving with impossible fluidity. Whispers clawed at Alexei's mind. Dmitri. Alexei, the station, something old, hungry, patient. Desperate, Alexei moved deeper into the station, hoping to find control rooms, communications panels, anything that could anchor him in reality. But the station refused. Lights flickered, panels warped with impossible angles, and the low hum became a cacophony of cries, laughter, and unintelligible voices. The boundaries between reality and hallucination collapsed. He saw Dmitri again, appearing in the periphery of his vision, sometimes behind glass, sometimes floating mid-air, limbs twitching unnaturally. Every time Alexei tried to focus, Dmitri's figure dissolved into shadow. Each glimpse of his friend was worse than the last, a silent scream imprinted in Alexei's mind. The station was playing with him. Each corridor seemed to pulse, opening and closing unpredictably. Walls appeared to breathe, floors rippled like water. The particle-like lights floating around the station coalesced into shapes. Faces twisted in agony, reaching out with invisible hands. Alexei could feel the station's consciousness pressing into his mind. Thoughts were no longer private. Memories of Dmitri, of Earth, of the mission, were warped and twisted, rearranged into visions of terror. The shadows whispered, "He is ours, now you belong here too." He ran blindly, collisions with walls and debris barely slowing him. The hum grew louder, vibrating through his skull. Finally, he stumbled into a chamber unlike any other, a black void within the station, lit by countless tiny lights that resembled distant stars. Floating in the center was Dmitri, or a horrifying facsimile of him. Limbs stretched, body contorted, eyes wide with terror and understanding. Alexei's stomach churned as the realization hit, his friend had become part of the station's consciousness, trapped, twisted, consumed. Before Alexei could react, a shadow lunged. It wrapped around him, and in that instant, his vision exploded with blinding light. Shapes, sounds, voices. Everything was shoved into his mind at once. He felt his body tear against reality, his mind shredded by the station's will. Dmitri's voice, warped, distant, unrecognizable, echoed in his skull. "You shouldn't have come." Everything went black. Hours. Days. Time had no meaning. Alexei drifted in the black chamber, unable to move. He could see fragments of the station, corridors twisting endlessly, shadows coiling and uncoiling. A distant whisper repeated, "Alexei. Alexei." Then, suddenly, he heard a faint communication tone. The voice was human, but distorted, buried beneath layers of the station's influence. "Alexei, can you hear me?" It was Irina from the control center, a faint tether to sanity. Alexei tried to respond, but his voice was swallowed by the void. He realized with horror, the station had broken his mind. Dmitri was gone, consumed entirely, and Alexei was now trapped, alive, aware, but imprisoned within the station's consciousness. The lights flickered, shadows writhed, whispers multiplied. He understood one thing with terrible clarity: there would be no escape. The station, ancient and sentient, had chosen him as it had chosen Dmitri. His thoughts were no longer his own. The void of silence had claimed him. And somewhere, in the black void outside the station, Dimitri's distorted form floated eternally, a warning, a memory, a part of the station itself. Alexei screamed, but the sound was meaningless. Only the whispers answered, patient, eternal, promising that the station would feed, twist, and consume any who entered its halls. This is where the incident ends. Dimitri's disappearance has been fully depicted, Alexei is trapped, and the station remains a living, conscious, terrifying entity. The horror is psychological, supernatural, and cosmic, the ultimate isolation and fear of space amplified beyond imagination.